Started in 1969 when Project Blue Book closed its doors. It opened up and basically became something that allowed people to submit their cases and they would investigate them. And today it's still going strong. We're worldwide. We have chapters all over the world. And just our digital database alone, we have over 140,000 cases that's available to any members that want to join up and see them. MUFON is an amazing organization. I cannot be more proud to be part of it. Serving the community and hearing from so many experiencers and people who've seen and witnessed so many incredible things. And MUFON does an incredible job at investigating them. It's the only organization I know that if you submit a case to us, a trained field investigator will reach out to you and investigate your case. And we have amazing field investigators. The only critique I have of MUFON is I believe they do not do enough to show the cases to the public. That is why I created presentations like this. So I have a handful of what I would consider cases of interest that I'm going to share with you guys right now. Is it possible to kill the lights just a little more on this side? There we go. So let's get into it. I say we start with one out of the basin. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Deep Creek Campground. Has anybody by raise of hands stayed there? Anybody? Up there? We'll see if you guys go back after this. So this case came in 2023. Happened in summer of 2007 though. Another thing to note is MUFON does not care how long ago that case happened. We've investigated cases that are over 100 years old, so it does not matter. So originally, there's a group inside of MUFON called the Experiencer Resource Team. It's a special group that any case where someone comes in contact with non-human intelligence, or they're taken, it goes to the ERT. At the time, I was not a member of the ERT, I am now. This case slipped through the cracks. It somehow came to me, and I was able to investigate it before they figured it out and sent it to ERT. It's one of those happy accidents, I would say. I interviewed 2 of the 3 witnesses for this case. So here's a little map from Duchesne up there. It's about, I think, 2-hour drive to get up there. And we have the 3 witnesses. The main witness said that this camping ground was his favorite camping ground to go to. Even though they lived in northern Utah, they did not mind driving all the way out here. He said the fishing was amazing. The campground was not crowded. He loved to come out here. They're in their early 20s. They get off work. It's an impromptu camping trip. They say, let's just load up and go to Deep Creek Campgrounds. So they drive all the way out there. It's about midnight. They get about 5 minutes away from the campground. Off to the side, they have a ravine. It goes down, hits the bottom, and goes up. And off in the distance, they see an orange light glowing from behind the pine trees. Now at first, they thought, oh, it's a fire. The forest is on fire. They drive a little closer and they notice this light does not have a flicker to it. It is a solid orange light. They park the vehicle and they just watch. And what they saw emerge from behind the pine trees was what they described as 2 10 to 12-foot beings. Their heads were larger than what ours would be if we were 10 to 12 feet. Their arms were longer, legs a little bit longer. They could not see a lot of features on them as the light was from behind them. The main witness tells me that one of them hung out by a tree and the other one decided to come into the opening. And it was walking, and it was described as its movements were non-human-like. They were more dance-like or melodic. And it had its head towards the ground as if it was searching for something. And it came into an opening. And it raised its arms up into the air. And a very bright oval light appeared right in front of it. He said that it was a very bright light that had sharp edges to it that went out about 10, 12 feet across. This light began to snake its way down the ravine. At first, they were still trying to figure out what was going on. He said he thought maybe it was a person that was holding this light. However, he said there was no bounce to it at all. It began snaking its way down the ravine, picked up speed, hit the bottom of the ravine, picked up more speed, came up the other side, towards them. They decided to get the hell out of there. They turn the vehicle back, they go back to the main road, They point it towards the road going into Deep Creek campgrounds, and they sit there for about an hour, shaking and trying to understand just what the hell they saw. There's 2 men and 1 woman in the car. Both passengers were shaking. The driver told me I sat there with a pistol on my lap, and we just sat and watched. The woman in the back was crying hysterically because she was so afraid of what was going on. Now, I have to give them credit. Perhaps youth is considered a little stupidity. They decided to go back after an hour. I would not do that. I would advise none of you to do that as well. They decided to drive back. They don't see the light. They don't see the beings, and they park at the Deep Creek campgrounds. They were so freaked out, they didn't even get out of the vehicle to pitch their tents. The woman tells me, this may sound gross, but I was so freaked out I didn't want to leave the vehicle, so I just rolled the window down, stuck my butt out, and peed. They somehow fall asleep, and all of a sudden they hear some fluttering sound. Morning is broken, and they wake up, and they see a hummingbird inside their vehicle. Now, it is possible that this bird flew in the short second that window was down. But I can tell you, I have investigated other cases that involve contact with non-human entities that have sightings of hummingbirds with them. In fact, Native American culture and other cultures have a lot of symbolism in the hummingbird. They believe the hummingbird symbolizes a messenger or a connection between worlds. I believe, this is my own belief, that this hummingbird was put there by them. A message was sent. You saw us, we saw you. But we want to let you know that we are just part of this world as much as this hummingbird. And we're no more threatening than this hummingbird. Let's get into our next case. Now, before we kind of get into it, I'm going to show you a trail cam photo. I know there's a lot of people here, I've spoken with people here that are mediums, psychics, people who have intuitions. If this image means anything to you, please get with me after the presentation. If you have any sort of inkling as to maybe what this is, come talk to me. We're still trying to figure this out. It may be nothing, it may be something. There's no right answers, there's no wrong answers. So let's get into this. This is MUFON case 120608 from Delta, Colorado. The investigator are Seth Feinstein and Anniversary Feinstein, a married couple. Seth is the state director of Colorado. He's also a member of the photo analysis team. He is our regional director. Anniversary is a state director over, I think, 9 different states. She's part of the ERT team. You will not find people in MUFON that wear more hats than Seth and Anniversary. And they are damn fine people to have. Amazing investigators and just great people. Now, Delta, Colorado is in what is known as the North Fork Valley area. I believe that the North Fork Valley area is one of the most underappreciated hotspots for high strangeness. In fact, in this same town, Delta, Colorado, last year, Seth and Anniversary Feinstein investigated a cattle mutilation case. There was a cow that was found drained of its blood, had the typical sharp instrumental cuts to it. They took soil samples from the area and sent it to MUFON's lab. MUFON has its own lab. And they found that the soil closest to the cattle had higher levels of radiation than the control samples further back. Also, there was an almost 2-inch divot in the ground, leading us to believe that this cow had been dropped from high up. Here is the North Fork Valley area. There's a lot of towns there. There's Delta up in sort of the upper left-hand corner. So I did not investigate this case, however, I did talk with the main witness after the case had concluded. He and his family live on a very large piece of land. They have several hundreds of acres. I don't mean to brag, but I own 1/10 of an acre in Salt Lake City, so you could fit a lot of Dustins on this property. They take care of the land. I believe they have sort of like cattle and things like that. They live off the land. They have a dog, a husky, high energy. And this area is perfect for a high energy dog. They can run around for days. Go sniff things, pee on things, do whatever their important dog business is. One day, The dog refuses to go outside. They have to force it to go outside to use the bathroom. It is fighting them, tooth and nail. Now this guy tells me there are black bears and mountain lions in the area. However, he has never seen one. But when he saw his dog acting strange, he said, something's going on in this area, and my family may be in danger. He goes and buys a trail cam, puts it up on a post, and points it in the area that the dog refuses to go to. Day after day, the dog does not want to go outside. Finally, one day, they find the dog incredibly lethargic, to the point where it cannot even walk up or down stairs. They rush it to the vet. They go in there, they tell the vet all the things that have been happening with the dog. They say it may have been attacked by a mountain lion or a bear. We need to take a look at it. The vet says, sure. So huskies have a lot of fur on them. So the vet had to shave it down. And what the vet found was 6 uniform puncture wounds. 1 on each side of the hip area, 1 on each side of the rib cage stomach area, and 1 on each side of the upper shoulder, lower neck area. The vet tells him, your animal was not attacked. I've seen a lot of animal attacks in my days. In fact, I don't know what the hell this is. I would like to run some tests. They take some swabs, they send it to the lab, it comes back negative. There's no infection, there's no weird things that they find out. Luckily, the dog makes a full recovery. But that day, they return home, going, what the hell's going on our property? He decides to check the trail cam. And we have this guy here. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, we have one object, and sort of in the lower right-hand corner, we have another object that's sort of slowly hovering above the ground or possibly touching the ground. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Now there was 2 images on the trail cam. There was this one here with the 2 objects, and this one here, the one I showed you at the beginning. Seth went to a lot of extensive research trying to figure out what are the effects of radiation on photography. What he found was really mostly just physical photography. We know that this trail cam initiated its night vision mode, as you can see from the colors. So this may have been someone just simply walking in front of it, triggering it. This may have been someone adjusting it. Some people have theorized that this may be the inside of one of those craft. If you look at the bottom, that bulbous area there, some people think that maybe that's the top head of a being. Now we don't have the exact date and time, but from here on that, this original photo to here is about 3 hours and 40 minutes later. He did not set the time right when he set up the trail cams. He decides to continue filming in this area with trail cams, and he finds other strange objects, like this one here, a black orb. Now, if we look at it from a gradient filter, a lot of times we'll run this through a gradient filter to give us a little better idea of the shape and maybe some of the features on it. You can almost see like a ring on the inside of it, a tiny dot, almost as if this is a camera lens or an eyeball that's facing us. Now, orbs, they come in different sizes and colors. So at a different date, he captures this guy here, a white orb. If we add the gradient filter, you can also see sort of a lip or a circle, almost as if it's the same thing as the first photo, but it's pointing downwards. Caught this little guy a little later. This is when the night vision was snapped. Now, I will say that trail cams, the night vision sometimes is not the best. What they have to do is they have to increase the exposure time in order to get certain images. So sometimes you see a streak across of an image that's moving. So this may just be a bug. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, but since it's in the case file, I want to show it to people, hear you guys' opinions, and let you know that I feel like it's important to show everyone that's in these files. If it isn't a bug, I don't think it would be very cute for this thing to land on your nose. And last but not least, in the right side, we have an object that seems to be flying in the air. Now this one, once again, people say maybe it's a bird that's holding on to something. If you look closely, it looks like that piece that's going downward isn't quite connected to it, though. And it seems like a large object. So it may be something, it may be nothing. Once again, I want to display for you guys, hear you guys' opinions afterwards. All right, let's get into our next cases. Florida. Now you guys may think the only crazy thing going on in Florida is alligators and snakes and people on bath salts, but there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Florida. The investigator for this was David Toon and some of the other members of the Florida chapter. David Toon is a retired military aviation, an incredibly sharp guy, and just an amazing investigator. So let's get into Umatilla, Florida, December 5th, 2023. We have a woman and her dog driving northbound on this road here, when all of a sudden she hears a metal screeching sound. It's almost painful. Her dog begins to yelp as if it's in pain. All of a sudden, her car shuts off, her phone shuts off. She feels static and pressure on her head. She sees a black triangular craft fly overhead, going from west to east. It is so low to the ground, it clips the top of a tree. She told investigators it cut that tree like it was nothing. Not too long after, it was followed by 2 fighter jets. Her car was not the only one to be stopped. There was multiple cars on this road that went dead. She exits the vehicle, and everyone exits the vehicle, and they all had physiological effects. The main witness was shaking. She saw a truck driver that had blood coming from his ear. Another woman got out of her car, and she had wet herself. A man got out of his car, and he just sat down in front of the car and just started crying. A couple moments pass. She gets in her car, and out of fear of what's going on, they all leave. She goes home, and luckily she reports this to MUFON right away. MUFON investigators investigate her and her husband. Her husband said that when she came home, she was in a state that he has never seen her before. The investigators take electromagnetic readings of her car and compare them to the exact year, make, and model of another car as a control. And what they found was the driver's side had a lower electromagnetic reading compared to the control. And the passenger side, the side that the vehicle flew out of, had a much higher reading of electromagnetic energy. There was so much energy in this area as this craft flew by, it turned her car into a magnet. So let's get into the second case. This was 27 days later, 43 miles apart. This one came into Enigma Labs. Enigma Labs is a privately funded UFO reporting company. And you can access all their database online and through their app. So not too long after New Year's Day on 2024, someone reports seeing something 200 feet above, solid black triangle with a light on each point, moving west to east, the same exact direction as the one before. Seemed translucent, as they could see the clouds through it. Dead silent, and appeared almost as if it were a hologram. Incident number 3, 15 days later, 11 miles apart from the second incident. This was a MUFON case, Ormond Beach, Florida. Once again, David Toon and his team handled this case. We have a woman who's going northbound again. Different lady. She's talking with a friend on the phone. All of a sudden on the phone, they hear this strange, intense static that they've never heard before. She looks up about 100 feet in front of her and a little over 100 feet above her. She sees two triangular craft silently hovering, pointing towards her and keeping up with her car. They had red and green lights on the bottom. It's depicted here on top just so you can see it. She sees it for maybe 20 seconds and they disappear right in front of her eyes. As soon as they disappear, the phone loses static. Her friend says, "What the hell was that noise?" So the team decided to do another electromagnetic reading of her car, and they found an exact make, year, and model. And they compared it. The front of the car had a lower electromagnetic reading than the control car, and the rear had a much higher reading. Once again, a lot of energy in this area left her car like a magnet. She actually created a diorama with her child's toys to explain a little further what she saw. And her car is that tank right there. That's an excellent choice. Those lights were on the bottom. So let's fast forward a bit. This year, May 17, 2025, 32 miles apart from Incident 3 and very close to Incident 2, Oak Hill, Florida. This case comes out of Newport, the National UFO Reporting Center. It's another UFO reporting agency. You can visit them, newport.org. They're an amazing organization. We always check their cases too to see if anything correlates. And I found this one not too long ago. We have someone who was out late at night latching their gate. They heard a weird tone pitch ringing in their ears. Head began to buzz and felt like static. They saw a completely silent black triangle not too far in front of them. They quoted as saying, "My throat closed and I was struggling to breathe. It felt like a forced physiological response not typical of anxiety." Much like that first case I was telling you guys about. A strong pressure was felt in their head to the point they began to feel pain. The rest of the night they had a headache, was nauseous, and basically had to sit and cry. The next day they seemed to return to normal. So what do we have here? Let's check some flight maps. This is what David Toon checked out. This shows all the different paths and areas, a VFR map they call it. This is that first MUFON case. If you see that black car there, that's where the first incident happened. And if you see, it's kind of hard to see, it's a little busy on here, but you see a gray line that goes southeast and then shoots directly east. That gray line went right over where the incident happened. And that gray line happens to be a military flight path designated for military vehicles. The second MUFON case, where the lady saw the two triangles hovering above her. If you see that red X right there, that is where her car was at. Once again, we have a gray line that goes downwards. This gray line is a military route, known for known or unknown uses of low-level routes for test flights, training, or normal operations. So is it unknown? Or is it the infamous TR-3B? The TR-3B is believed to be a top-secret military aircraft that uses technology from recovered non-human craft, has anti-gravity capabilities, typically a solid red and or white light on each vertice. And sometimes it's described as having a porthole right in the middle of a bright white light. Also, cloaking abilities. Utah is no stranger to TR-3B sightings. We had two incredible sightings in downtown Salt Lake City. The one in fall of 2012, the lady was driving to get on I-15. She got off work a little early. She was trying to beat the traffic. She was stopped at a light. She looks up. She sees a triangular craft. She told me it was either incredibly shiny or translucent because I could see the clouds through it or reflecting off of it. She sees it for one block, it banks to the left and disappears right in front of her eyes. Another notable case, October 11, 2013 in Wellington, Utah. A retired police officer sees a giant, silent black craft hovering overhead, followed by two military helicopters, solid black with armaments. They were flying so low, he could make out the color of the pilots' helmets in the helicopter. He waved to them, and to his complete amazement, one of the pilots waved back. That was sweet of him. All right, this one is a fun one. This one came out of Beaver, Utah, just last year, July 18, 2024. This was investigated by Ben Stoll. Ben Stoll is here in the audience right now. Can we give him a round of applause? Right there, raise your hand, Ben. Ben Stoll resides right here in the Uinta Basin. He's one hell of an investigator. Better than me, I will say. Let's not get his head a little too big, though. And he's just a great guy. MUFON in Utah would not be the same without him. So this case came in. It was a husband and wife driving northbound right outside of Beaver. When the wife saw a black object, big black object, zoom past the car silently. And it was going so fast it freaked her out. She whipped her head back around, saw it for another split second, and this thing was gone. The driver did not even see it. Luckily, they had a dash cam. They pulled over at the next stop. They took 3 screenshots, pulled from it, not video, screenshots, and submitted it with the case. When I was reading the explanation and seeing these screenshots, I assigned the case to Ben. And I said, listen, just from looking at the screenshots, this thing may be a bug or a bird. See if you can get the video. He says, absolutely. He gets to work, he finds the video, gets them to email them to him, talks with both witnesses. And he's watching the video. We have the screenshots. We have the timestamp. And he goes, I'm not seeing anything. I go, what? How is that possible? So finally he pulls it into a video editing software, and he had to go frame by frame in order to see this object. Now let's talk about this dash cam real quick. This is a really nice dash cam. We have the date and time stamp. We also have GPS. We know the exact location this vehicle was at when it happened, and it also has the speed that they're traveling. Now one other cool feature of this dash cam is it can record up to 4K resolution. They had it set to 2K, somewhere in between typical 1080p high definition and 4K, but they had 2K set for 60 frames per second, which is absolutely key to this case. Most dash cams will typically do like 30 frames per second. You don't need a lot of frames in order to figure out whose fault it was in an accident. So that is right where they were at right there. We know that from the GPS location. They were going northbound. So I'm going to play for you a clip from the video. And let's see if you guys can spot this.
I believe.
If I raise a hand, how many people saw the object? You? One over there? I've given this talk several times, and usually there's only 2 people in the audience that can see it. So let's slow it down. I'm going to do 1/10 of the speed. Let's see if you guys can catch it here. Phew. All right. So we have 10 frames of this object, 1/6 of a second. Let's go to frame 1. Frame 1, you can't even really see it unless you zoom in. So let's zoom in. You see that white or that black dot up in the clouds? That's number 1. There's frame 2. Frame 3, we see a little movement. Frame 4. Now frame 5 is an interesting one. We have that original black dot, but we also have another object there. Possibly 2 objects. There's a little white hazy thing that may be breaking this thing apart. I'm going to come back to this frame. I promise you guys, put a pin in it. Here's frame 6, starting to see a little shape to it. Frame 7 is the first frame that you can kind of see it from its original aspect ratio. There's frame 7, circular. Here's frame 8 from the aspect ratio. Let's zoom in. This frame is an interesting one. I'm going to zoom in a little more for you. You guys notice something around that sphere? Some sort of field or energy. It looks like a box around it. Frame 9, it almost looks like an arrowhead shape. And frame 10, this is the last frame we have of this object. After it was zipped by the car, she said she whipped her head around, saw for a split second, this thing was gone. By frame 11, this thing's past the car. It's behind him. So, we don't have two video angles, unfortunately, so we can't really figure out the distance, which would figure out the speed. It's almost as if you close one of your eyes, you lose depth perception. However, we do have witness testimony that this thing came from far out and zipped past the car. So humor me for a second, because I was interested in how fast this object could possibly have been going. So in frame 8, you can kind of see it up there, and it's sort of in between the trailer that's right in front of them and the diesel that's up ahead. If that object was in between them in frame 8, I said, let's see the distance between frame 8 to 9, 9 to 10, and 10 to 11. Now I'm being generous, because by frame 11, this thing's behind the car.
Does it show the speed on the bottom of the film?
It does. They were going 80 miles per hour. So I start thinking, how the hell are we going to figure out distance on this one? So I start looking at the fence post, and I go, is there some way that the fence post could give us some things? I said, no, they could probably put fence posts up, however. So I went for a walk. That's how I sort of think. And while I was walking on the road, I saw the same dash lines that you have here. And I said, well, I wonder if those things are regulated. Turns out they are. Each white dash on the road is 10 feet, and each gap between it to the other one is 30 feet. So we count them up, we have about 6 of those lines and areas in between. Now I don't mean to sucker you guys into a mathematical problem here. We're going to break out a little algebra here. We also know, so we have about 240 feet possibly between us and this object in frame 8. We also know that the car is traveling 80 miles per hour, so we have to subtract that from the distance traveled. And it comes out to rounding up to 6 feet. 1/20th of a second. So let's do some algebra. Don't leave, hang in there. Class, hang in there. I wanted to figure out what it was miles per hour wise. I just want to show my work here. I believe this object was going at least 3,190 miles per hour. Now, if you remember, hang on for questions real quick. Well, I'll have some time afterwards, don't worry. Yeah, me too. So, when I originally assigned this case to Ben, all we had is the 3 screenshots. We did not have the video, and I told him this may be a bug or a bird. After calculating this, I told Ben there's no way that's a bug. I told him, however, it could still be a bird if that bird had a rocket up its ass. Here's some closer-up images from frame 8, 9, and 10. Now, I will say we submitted this to the photo analysis team at MUFON. We wanted them to take a look at it. One of the photo analysis experts emailed me back and said, hey, this is crazy to me, but in frame 10, this thing oddly resembles the same shape as that gimbal video. I'll give a shout out, that was Greg Cisco that pointed that out from Illinois. All right, I said we were going to put a pin in it. That part where it breaks apart into multiple things. So we have frame 4, a tiny black dot there. Frame 5, we have possibly 2 objects. Frame 6, frame 7, and by frame 8, that original dot disappears. Now, what could this be? This could be known what is called a pixel refresh error or a stutter. meaning that certain areas on the camera are frozen in place. So certain pixels are frozen there while everything else is being refreshed. Sometimes if you're streaming movies at home, you'll see this. If you're streaming a movie and all of a sudden your bandwidth drops, everything gets a little blocky. Certain areas are moving, but others are not. However, I studied this as close as I could to center it. When a car is moving, it has natural motion. You don't see any bounce or things that you could describe as saying like, hey, that pixel would somehow move if the car is moving. I do not think it's a pixel refresh rate error. The other explanation is there was two objects, possibly three. There's a little white area in between splitting that second object. The third explanation is, the one that I believe, is that original dot is the port or the portal that thing shot out of, and it closes up on frame 8.
Yep.
That original dot, yeah, right there, sure. So by frame 8, that original dot just disappears. The first few frames, it's there. You see it for, I think, 2 or 3 frames, and it moves up a little bit. She's louder than you are. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to Space Wolf Research. Can we give a round of applause to Ryan Burns? Ryan has been incredibly generous to MUFON in Utah, and I love the guy. And I'll be the first to admit, when I became state director, I sort of swung that title around in order to get my foot in the door and be able to investigate his property. There we are right there in front of the UFO hotspot sign. I noticed a lot of you taking pictures of the UFOs, but not taking pictures of us. I was just wondering why. We're not handsome enough or interesting enough? Fine. So I just want to let you guys know, in April of 2024, we went out there to do an on-field investigation. And at that time, I was not an experiencer. I had not seen anything, but we saw a lot of incredible activity out there. We caught a UFO on camera. We caught some strange noises. And one thing we caught was Mari. Hey, there's Brian's mother right there. Can we get her a round of applause too? I don't know where they are at. Anybody know Mari's friends? Over there. She's amazing. So I wanted to bring something up because I think this is important for you guys to know. We found a tooth on the property. Found out later it's a canine tooth. I know many of you are very interested in the legends of the dire wolf. So I wanted to give you guys a little comparison. There's coyote teeth to the left of it. 2 coyote teeth, and that's the one we found. So it's safe to say it's not a coyote. And I took it, we had it analyzed, just physically analyzed towards other teeth. And it turns out that this thing was the size of possibly coy wolf or even wolf. And yesterday I signed it back over to Ryan. He's going to do some more research and analyze it. And so I just want to let you guys know Ryan's speaking a little later. Please go check him out. He's an amazing asset to, I don't even say the Uinta Basin, I think, for the phenomenon worldwide. He's a great guy. I just wanted to give him a shout out. So one more thing before we get into our last case. There are 2 University of Utah professors that wrote a paper about UFOs and UAPs. And it's not a paper debunking it. It's literally leaning towards saying, hey, people are seeing things that we cannot explain. Rich Medina's author 1. He's a member of the Utah chapter, very bright guy. Love chatting with him. And in this report, they have a heat map. They took data from Newfort, the National UFO Reporting Center. They crunched the numbers, and per capita, per county, we have a heat map. And it's safe to say we're best in the West. Look at the west of the United States. Look how red hot that is. Especially when we're talking about the Four Corners states and Nevada. Enigma Labs, that independent company I was talking about, they released their own heat map, but it was just state to state. Once again, their conclusion was the Four Corners states are on fire, and New Mexico was off the charts. So we're going to get a little strange here for a second. So this was San Rafael Swell. We went camping there last summer. It's a beautiful place. If any of you are in the area, please check it out. They have petroglyphs there. It's an amazing area. And one of the main attractions here is this fossilized imprint of a dinosaur foot. That's my buddy Cody Sparks' arm next to it. This footprint is believed to have been put there during the Jurassic period, 140 to 200-ish million years ago. So my buddy Cody has seen me give this presentation before, and he was doom scrolling on YouTube or Instagram, and he found a video of a woman sort of discrediting that dinosaurs had sort of roamed the United States. She said, well, if dinosaurs roamed the United States, and they were everywhere, why aren't I digging in my garden in the backyard and finding dinosaur bones? And why aren't we tripping over dinosaur bones? So an expert took her video and corrected her. Not so nicely, but he corrected her by saying the reason you're not tripping over bones is because in order for a footprint or bones to be preserved, they most likely need to be where there's sedimentary rock. Mudstone, limestone, so on and so forth. When these dinosaurs die, they become covered with dust or mud as they biologically begin to break apart. Their bones will take these minerals in, and it reinforces it. It actually becomes stronger than the bone is before, and it's allowed to withstand the test of time, millions of years. And he shows this map here. National parks with dinosaurs. Sites with dinosaur fossils in building stone, associated dinosaur fossils. We have number 12 there, which is Dinosaur Monument. That grouping there, four corner states. Cody says, man, I'm telling you, man, it seems like all those areas are where the hot spots are at on that map you showed. So I said, hey, let's overlay the map. We have areas up there in Wyoming, Montana. Here's another map, national natural landmarks and national historic landmarks with dinosaurs. So if we overlay the map, we see a lot of correlation there as well. Now, I'm not saying aliens have anything to do with dinosaurs. I'm going to be very clear here. What I am doing is posing a question. Why is it that areas that are primed geologically to preserve bone are also the same areas we are seeing a lot of activity in? Could it be that these areas are allowing them to pop through to our existence easier? Is the climate better for them? Are they mining something in the earth that they need or want? It's simply a question. All right, let's get into our last case here. Let me take a little water. So this case came in September of 2023, but it's on August 2023. Hit my desk. And before we get into it, I wanted to show you guys a little something. So this is Uinta Basin, preaching to the choir here. We're here. In case you wondered where we're at, I do that sometimes too. So when I became a field investigator and I had full access to the database, I was curious as to if I were to crunch the numbers and find out which counties per capita had the highest instance where MUFON deemed the case to be unknown. I naturally assumed before crunching the numbers that we'd have a grouping of those counties there in the Uinta Basin. But when I crunched the numbers, I found the top 4 counties for unknown cases per capita are all in southern Utah. This happens to be one of them. We have 2 women living in Arizona. They go on a week-long road trip up to the Pacific Northwest. When I asked the driver, what were you doing up there? She said, oh, we were out there to celebrate the festivities of our people. I said, can you elaborate? What do you mean by that? She said, oh, I'm Navajo and the passenger's Apache. And though they're not sisters, they're such good friends, they refer to each other as sisters. They go on the trip, they swing back around, they come down through the northern Utah, and they find themselves in southern Utah at a town called Holden, very small town. It's almost sunset. They stop for snacks and soda. At which point, the passenger says, I believe I found a shortcut that can get us home quicker. This shortcut would somehow cut across from Holden to the town of Aurora. So they set off on the road, and they're driving. And they don't get too far before the driver sees what she described as a bright orange orb on the passenger side, bouncing along the treetops. At first she said, I thought this thing was man-made. That's where my mind went. As it continued to keep up with them and got closer to the car, she realized this is not man-made at all. This thing came within feet of the car. At one point, she said the passenger remarked that the inside of the orb looked like a cage. When I talked with the passenger, she described to me an object that I couldn't quite wrap my head around, so I had her draw it. That's a drawing of what she said she saw. The passenger, she noted it was as big as a refrigerator, silver-like or aluminum in color. It had lights of red, blue, and orange, which were turning in a counterclockwise manner. She likened the visuals of the lights to that of colored oil paint swirling in water. She also noted seeing some blue light that was emanating near or from a house nearby. They get to the town of Aurora, and this thing goes off in the distance, leaves them. They continue driving, and the driver calls her son's father. I spoke with him as well. He corroborated the exact same story, said that she called and they were very scared that this orange orb was following the car. They get past the town of Aurora. They continue on. And they're greeted with what the driver describes as the diamond-shaped craft. It's a rhombus shape with a black cross in the middle. She described that cross in the middle as not so much black as there was an absence of color. And all the other quadrants were super bright, pure light. This thing multiplied from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5 at one point. They kept getting close to the car and backing off, close to the car and backing off. She tells me they were changing their size. I say, so when it gets close to the car, it appears very big. And then when it backs off, it looks small. She says, no, you don't understand. It was literally changing its own size. At their widest, they were about the length or the width of the 2-lane road they were on. At their smallest, they were about 2 feet wide. The passenger, once again, described to me something I couldn't quite wrap my head around and said, can you please draw me a picture? She noted that these objects emitted green, blue, yellow, and a faint orange light, so brightly lit that it would hurt her eyes to look at them directly. Believed to have had 3 legs or claws. If you look at the bottom of it, there's those 3 little legs or claws. One of them attached himself to the car and began tapping on the window. They continue driving on to what we believe might be the town of Lyman. We're not 100% sure. And when they get there, these craft leave. They get a little bit past Lyman and the driver says, we have to tell someone about this. We have to go to a police station. We have to let people know that this is going on. They turn back around, they go to the town of Lyman, and they find that this string of towns in southern Utah are very rural. Everything closes down at night. They pull into what they believe is a gas station. They park. She gets out of the car and looks around. The city sees no lights. The passenger is so freaked out, she does not want to exit the car. She gets back in the car and says, we're just going to have to keep driving on. As soon as they get in the car, they heard something on the roof. They continue driving on. The passenger at one point sees a jackrabbit off to the side of the road. And she says out loud, run, rabbit, or they'll take you too. A bit of a comic relief in a very tense moment. However, like I mentioned before, hummingbirds, Other animals are very prominent in close encounters. In fact, in ERT cases, the top 3 animals that people will see when they have an encounter are owls, deer, or rabbits. In 2023, the same year this case rolled in, there was a case out of Cedar City, investigated by Richard Banasek, former military, retired police officer, a hell of an investigator for the ERT. Happened right outside of Cedar City in 1978. 2 women were driving late at night. They see some large light in the sky. They come to what they believed would be big 3-foot jackrabbits in the road, blocking their way. They park, they get out of the car. These jackrabbits turn around to reveal themselves as being the Greys. And they were taken. Not only were they taken, their car was taken as well. And they were deposited in Grand Junction, Colorado. They were driving a friend's car back through the country. And so they were keeping track of the mileage, and somehow that mileage gap disappeared from how they got to Grand Junction. So I wanted to bring it up that animal sightings are very prominent in this phenomenon. So the passenger sees that rabbit, says, "Run, rabbit, or they'll take you too." Not too long after, the diamond craft reappeared. At which point, the car begins to stall, almost like it's stuck in quicksand. The passenger screams to the driver, "Go, go, go." The driver points to her foot and says, "Look, my foot's on the gas all the way." They can hear the engine rev up, but the car is going nowhere. They're surrounded. The passenger says, "I just began to pray out loud. Please let us get home. Please let us get home to our family. We just want to get home." After a couple minutes of prayer, these things leave. The car begins traction again. They're able to continue on their way. They come to this place here, a cut in the rock, right before Hanksville, Utah. They drive past this cut in the rock and they see this, an enormous fireball object in the sky. They said it was almost swirling with lava or some sort of fire in the middle of it. The driver said it was twice the size of a full moon. She told me it was aware of us being there. She said it had a burning smell. I asked her, what did that burning smell like? She said it wasn't quite like burning plastic. It wasn't quite like burning wood. It smelled like something I had never smelled before in my life. This smell would stick with her for days after. She kept referring to it as the mothership. I can't help but notice you keep referring to this as the mothership. She said, I quote, "All the other craft are connected with it. I'm not sure why I know this, but I know all the other things we saw that night have to report to it." The passenger would draw me a very similar object, only she said she saw objects from the right of it flying into it. The passenger told me this thing was about the size of a quarter at arm's length. To give you a reference, if you were to hold out an aspirin at arm's length, that would be about the size of the full moon. The interesting part about this encounter is it's still very hazy to them. They cannot tell you how long they saw the fireball. They cannot tell you how and when it left. Did it just go off in the distance? Did it disappear? They don't know. Next thing they know, they're pulling into the town of Blanding. They find a parking lot that they believe is safe. They park and they just crash out. This is around 3 a.m. when they crashed out. So here's a little roadway. The blue path is what Google Maps will tell you to take. There's some shortcut somewhere in between Holden and Aurora. I'm not specific on where exactly that was. But this thing should have taken them 5 hours and 5 minutes. It took them over 7.5 hours, accounting for 2.5 hours of missing time. Let's talk about the aftermath. The passenger, when I talked to her about a month later, her eyes still were bothering her. She believes that those bright, pure lights on those diamond craft did damage to her eyes. She had drastic changes to her sleep cycle. She used to be an early to bed, early to riser. She found herself waking up at strange hours of the night and going out to look into the sky. She told me, "We are not the same. Something is missing. It wants us to go outside and look at the sky." Also, when she returned back home to Arizona, she said her nose for days after felt like it was bleeding, but nothing was coming out of it. The driver would take that route back the opposite way at a later date during the day. And her main takeaway was that it felt much longer than she remembered that night that they had all these encounters, leading her to believe there was definitely missing time. Memories began flooding back to the driver. She remembers being inside one of those diamond-shaped craft traveling at an incredible speed towards the mothership. Unlike the passenger, the driver felt very lucky to have had this experience. However, with guilt in her voice, knowing the difficulty the passenger was having trying to deal with this, she told me for weeks after returning home, I longed to be back with those diamond craft. She wrote me out of the blue one day. She said, "Hi, Dustin. I've been busy working a lot. I had a dream a few days ago where a being was trying to communicate with me. They communicate with their minds, but they can also use their voices. The being used its voice, and the being spoke to me in some sort of melodic language. I think what he was trying to ask me was, what is the purpose of human beings in the universe? I'm not sure if this dream was from a memory or not, but it was so real." The passenger, continually, every time I talked to her, said she wished she'd never gone on this trip. And the passenger would have continuous bone-chilling encounters for months after. The fact that the driver enjoyed this experience and the passenger hated it, it caused a rift between their friendship. They didn't talk for quite a while. So, whoa, my mic went out. Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Let's go to plan B.
Test.
Plan B works.
There we go. All right. I knew I was talking long, but not that long. So, thank you for reminding me. So, the last question I always ask people when I'm doing an investigation is, do you have any sort of belief or theory as to why you experienced what you experienced? And most people tell you no. They just tell you it must have just been I was at the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on what their experience was. When I was talking to the driver for the very first time, she told me a definitive yes. She said when they were swinging back up from the Pacific Northwest, they dropped into Wyoming for one last visit to someplace. And they visited this area here, the Bighorn Medicine Wheel in Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming. Now, medicine wheels are very sacred, spiritual grounds built by the indigenous people. And typically they're built with rocks in a circle. And they also have markers that go down and side to side, splitting this thing into 4 quadrants. Now, these 4 quadrants mean a lot of different things. They represent the directions, north, east, south, west. They represent the seasons, summer, fall, winter, spring. They represent the physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional states of human beings. This particular medicine wheel is one of the largest, oldest, most pristine, most visited, and one of the most interesting medicine wheels in all of North America. If you notice off to the side, there's these other circles or cairns of rocks. If you were to line them up, put a line between the two of them, it would line up to a very important celestial object during a specific time of year. For example, one of these lines would line up to the sunrise during the summer solstice. Another one would line up to the sunset during the summer solstice. They also line up to very important stars when they're visible again in this night sky, such as Sirius and Rigel. So when they were going here, one last trip before going home, the driver tells me as they got closer and closer to this medicine wheel, the passenger became more and more apprehensive. She became more anxious to the point where she'd never seen her like this before. They parked to get out, and the passenger says, I am not getting out of this car. I don't feel right. The driver says, it's okay, you can stay here, and I'll go see it on my own. So the driver goes to this medicine wheel. It's her heritage, it's her ancestry. She takes in the beauty of it. And she told me, I stood in front of it, and I prayed over it. And I prayed out loud, whatever is out there in the universe, I wish for it to show itself to me. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. You can catch me on social media here. That's just my website. I post a lot of cases from MUFON and other places. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much for your time, everybody.